Hello, BookTube. Today, I want to talk a little bit about nihilism. I get the sense that the word has been watered down, misused, or that there's not enough nuance within the concept. So, I want to talk about philosophical nihilism. And then I want to transition after we talk about that, because this is book related, to talking about cultural nihilism and also literary nihilism, which these are very different. And the first thing I want to say is nihilism isn't necessarily doomerism. Those two get conflated. And I want some nuance here. So when we talk about nihilism, what most people who have some philosophical training understand it to be is that life has no inherent meaning, or that there's no that meaning isn't baked into the cosmos, right? Like you will not find meaning out into the world. You have to create it, if anything. And where the nihilist would disagree from the existentialist, perhaps, although I never really saw much of a difference, is they might say uh, any attempt to grasp at meaning is always going to be folly, right? So there's many varieties of nihilism. There's many varieties of nihilists. You can, I'm going to put aside the, moral nihilism or epistemic nihilism, because those aren't all that relevant. I mean, they're there, but really what people in the philosophical tradition mean if they say, I'm a nihilist, which I'm going to put my cards on the table. I'm a nihilist in the existential sense, the sense that I talked about before, just a minute or two ago. There's no meaning baked into the universe. And I would even go so far as to say people would tend to say, well, nihilism is a natural outcrop of atheism. Maybe. I don't think necessarily. You'd have to show that, right? But certainly it lends itself, because once you take away the religious framework, which purportedly provides meaning, what are you left with? But I would make the contention that even if you're a religious person, even if you are a diehard religious person, and it's God that gives you meaning, you can always ask, why does that give my life meaning? Why? So, God, who's, I would imagine for most religious people, is a person, he says something. Why do his dictates, in virtue of him saying them, give your life meaning inherently? Suppose there was a powerful king, and the powerful king said to the serf, the meaning of your life is to plow these fucking fields. Is that inherent meaning baked into the cosmos? I don't think so. So, all of that is to say, at the bare bones, what a philosophical nihilist tends to be is an existential nihilist, which is to say, at the cosmic level, you will not find meaning. That's very boring, right? Like, that's not the kind of nihilism you tend to hear on the streets, if you hear it, or if, you know. But there's no reason. There's no a priori reason. A priori, this isn't talking down to you, this is just to make clear. A priori meaning without appeal to the senses. There's no a priori reason to think that nihilism stems from some kind of a depressive attitude, or a defeatist or a doomerist sentimentality. Certainly those can be linked. Certainly, if you are a nihilist, you can also be depressed. You can also be religious and be depressed, right? You can be any. We can be any number of things, but you can be perfectly content. Perfectly content, inventing your own meaning and understanding that meaning is arbitrary. I like to read books, and at the end of the day, is that any better than watching football? Not really, right? Okay, that's the basic understanding of philosophical nihilism. Now I want to transition a little bit into cultural nihilism, which is how the word is usually thrown around now with these different people who usually young men, which is too bad. That, and I try, despite being 125 years old, I try to keep up on what the youth are up to, and I can understand the kind of cultural nihilism that they feel. And as best as I can gauge, the cultural nihilism is the West has nothing to offer them, right? There's no, they feel, and I want to say rightly so, that given our current socio political situation, there's no hope for them. I mean, what do they got to look forward to? Crippling student debt, no career, worsening housing conditions, worsening rent, have, no retirement, having to work 3 fucking jobs. Yeah, it's hard to believe in anything when your material conditions are so out of whack. It's hard to imagine a better world when the world you have demands that you sort of rise and grind, right? I mean, forget the Gary V dumb bullshit, right? Forget the Ryan Holiday fake stoicism. Just about you rise and grind, and then that's how you get ahead. You work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for 20 years, and then you'll get ahead. Okay, forget that. That's a kind of stupidity reliant upon a fake notion of meritocracy where people get ahead based on merit, which no. I've long quipped that besides money being the national religion of America, it's also meritocracy. Like that's the dominant religion, right? It's so ingrained in people that people get what they deserve, even though all evidence points to the contrary, right? It's a hard thing to break. Anyway, that's a bit of a side tangent. And so you get these people who they become right wing grifters. They don't believe in anything. Why would they? Why would they believe in anything? What's on offer for them? So I have a lot of sympathy for, the young men, the men that are, I mean, entering college and the workforce now. I can't imagine how bad it is. I mean, I managed to go to graduate school during the crash of 2000 and the aftermath of the crash of 2008, and I kind of rolled that out. I mean, we have to sympathize with these young guys, and we have to not only sympathize with them, but not judge them too much because they've never known a world that hasn't fucked them. 18 to 25. That means that they were born into a world, if you're an American, they were born into a world of the Iraq War and the Afghanistan, and the war in Afghanistan. They were born into that. And then they witnessed their parents struggling, maybe even losing their house in like 2008, 9, 10, whenever. That's what formed their brain. War, recession, and then COVID hit. And we wonder why they don't believe in anything. They wonder why they have a hard time imagining a better future. So I get cultural nihilism. I think it needs to be fought against. I think we all need to do what we can in small part to try to envision a better world. A world where, and it may seem hard, right? But imagine a world in which everybody was taken care of, in which the functions of government or whatever of society were structured to take care of people. Their healthcare needs, their housing needs, where it wasn't dog eat dog. And for every person who says, oh, that's just too hard of a hill to climb, listen, slavery was entrenched in America for like 300 years. It was the driving economic force in the South for like 300 years. And we did away with that. Kind of. We did away with a certain kind of slavery. Now we have prisons that do a different kind. Boy, we're an inventive species. Keep reinventing horrendous things, right? But you get my point. We at least did away with chattel slavery. It can be done. But we have to give these kids, especially these young men, some sense of purpose. And that may be like sound, wild about, me who just admitted I was an existential nihilist. I don't believe that you should just mope around. I don't believe that. Just because I don't believe that there's cosmic meaning doesn't mean that there's not meaning to be found and invented. That you can't give it to yourself. You can't give yourself meaning. Find deep meaning in helping somebody, helping your neighbor move, being civically involved, teaching, figure out what you're good at and lean into that for the greater good of humanity. And you'll be a drop in the bucket, but if more people did that, that would be millions of drops in the bucket. And that really helps, right? Okay, that was my little riff on cultural nihilism, which is largely unrelated to books, but now I want to talk about literary nihilism to keep this book related. As best as I can gauge, as best as I can understand, what I gather literary nihilism is kind of summed up by Cormac McCarthy, who said, the point is that there is no point. That's the point. The point is there is no point. That when the story ends, there's not some grand lesson to be learned. There's not some grand takeaway. That there's not a deep message beyond things happen. Cormac McCarthy wrote the screenplay, I believe, for the movie The Counselor, and that movie got panned. I thought it was really good. It shows a bunch of disjointed events of things happening. And why do they happen? They just happen. And you unpack this these things, they just happen. And so when you're talking about nihilistic literature, it can be depressing. It can be a downer, as it were. It can seem doomerist. But I think structurally, in terms of structure and character and tone, it's don't expect a grand payoff, whatever that grand payoff might be. Now, this is my working understanding of literary nihilism, is that when you scratch the surface, you can maybe get to some deeper meaning, but that's illusory, right? That's at least not what the author intended, or at least you are making that up, right? The point is, there is no point. And that could be doomerist. That may not be the type of literature you're talking about. But that's what I would dub literary nihilism. I don't know if anybody else has talked about this before. And I'm in the primordial stages, right? I'm just working this out on camera right now. I worked it out a little bit in my head earlier over the couple months. I don't know how half-baked it is, but that's how I understand literary nihilism. The point is that there is no point. That at the end, whatever meaning you try to ascribe to a story, some broader meaning, is going to be, you're not going to find it. You might have to invent it. But that kind of betrays, obviously interpret a work however you want. But at the end of the day, I would say that betrays authorial intent. And authorial intent is not everything, obviously. All right, so I don't ramble on and on and on. I'm going to cut it there. I hope that this video was instructive in some way. Hope that it brought value to you in some way. I would say the main takeaway, outside of my short discussion of literary nihilism, and besides me getting a little bit irked about young men getting shit on. And again, this is not to say, I want to be very clear, this is not to say that young women, or women in general, don't get shit on a lot too. They do. Even more than men. So let's be clear. But you can't look at least in America, you can't look at the leading causes of death and not be concerned if you have any kind of beating heart. The leading cause of death, the second leading cause of death for men between the ages of 18 and 25 is suicide. That's alarming. That's the second leading cause. And again, I want to make this clear so that people don't come at me as, oh, you're a men's rights activist, or you're... No. But men have issues. And I think it's rooted in a kind of cultural nihilism. They don't believe in anything. And they've not... And largely, you have to really dig. Really dig. And it's not helped by, oh, man, or just shitting on men. That's not helpful. If you don't care about men, fine. If you don't give a shit and you just want a world of women, okay. I don't know what to say to that. I don't know how to argue with that. I think that's imbecilic. Just like it would be imbecilic if I said, I want a world of only men, which seems to be what the incels want. The incels seem to want a world of only men, and we think that that's bad. Similarly, a world with only women doesn't seem that good either. Or a world where men are subservient to women, which is what some people seem to want, I gather, I guess. In the same way, women shouldn't be subservient to men, right? I think it's obvious that we're equal members of the human species. Equal. All right. That's what I got. And I'm going to repeat it again. I hope this was of some value, even though it's only tangentially related to books. But I hope it's of some value. I hope that I got you to think about something or whatnot. So, these are crazy times. These are wild times. All the more reason to do your best to be kind to yourselves, be kind to one another as best you can. Uh, and yeah, so I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching, really. Thank you so much for watching, for taking time out of your day. Okay, with that, so I don't carry on at length. So, with that, peace.